Hi, I'm Lawrence, and I'm a young person in long-term recovery.
Lawrence, welcome to the show. Welcome to Inside Addiction. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Lawrence, let's start and just talk about how it was growing up for you.
Growing up, it was pretty good. My mother and father are pretty normal. They didn't lead an addicted lifestyle.
So mom and dad weren't addicts.
Nope.
Okay.
And they both worked and did the best they could for me. I had a pretty happy childhood at home.
You have any brothers or sisters?
No, I'm an only child.
So you're an only child.
That kind of led to me being a little bit spoiled, I guess, which is something that carried on later on into my addictive personality. But they did whatever they could for me, and I had no complaints at home. When I started going into school, I did have some trouble. I was diagnosed with ADHD or hyperactivity, I think they called it then, and my parents chose not to medicate me, and so I had a little trouble adjusting into school because I kind of bounce around a little bit, and the kids were kind of keep their distance, some of them. So I had to learn how to handle that.
How were your grades in school? Like elementary school? What are some of the memories you have of like being a kid in elementary school?
In elementary school, I had some friends, and I had a lot of fun with my friends, and I knew how to read and write and a lot of things like before I entered school. So I was way ahead of all the other kids. So sometimes that was good and worked in my favor, and sometimes it led to, I was bored and I'd be distracted and I would get into trouble and things like that. But my grades were always very good. I was always top of the class or ahead of the class up until probably about 6th grade.
Did you play any sports when you were like a kid?
I played some sports, but I have asthma and really bad allergies, so it was difficult for me to fully engage in those kind of things. So I did what I could, but I couldn't fully participate, which is kind of one of those things too that kind of set me apart. Like, I felt different from other kids.
What were some of the best memories you had from being a kid? Because it doesn't sound like anything really majorly significant happened when you were a child. You're not talking about any trauma. Mom and dad were together. Mom and dad weren't going through a divorce. It was a pretty average or typical childhood.
Yeah, I mean, most of my childhood consisted of, I had friends in the neighborhood, and when I woke up in the morning, when I wasn't in school, I'd wake up in the morning and, I'd get on my bike, ride to my friend's house. We'd ride our bikes around the neighborhood all day. We went into the woods and built tree forts in the woods, and, played video games. And
typical kid stuff.
Yeah.
Neither mom nor dad was an alcoholic or addict.
No.
Were you surrounded by drugs and alcohol when you were a kid, or were you pretty sheltered from that?
There are several members of my family here and there that they identify themselves as addicted, and then there were others that would partake in drinking and a little bit of recreational drugs and things like that. So I definitely had the opportunities to see the darker side. I had an uncle who was in a long-term facility, and like Thanksgiving and Christmas, usually we would have to go and visit him and eat with him and the other guys there. And kind of I was warned early on that there could be the potential that this could run in the family, so maybe you should probably stay away.
So you talked about kind of up until like the 6th grade. How was middle school, junior high for you?
It was a very difficult transition because I had moved we had moved from one town to another to be closer to my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
My mom wanted to be closer to her parents, and we moved in next door. So I had to start a whole new school.
All new friends.
Yeah. And, I had a lot of trouble to begin with, a lot of social anxiety and difficulty making friends, and I was kind of a loner, so it was a pretty hard transition.
How old were you when you first used any substances? Was that in middle school, junior high, or was it a little bit further along the line?
I was a little bit later on.
High school?
It was after high school. I'm kind of a late bloomer, so I didn't start until I was like 19.
Which isn't a bad thing, being a late bloomer.
No.
So before we get to that, how was high school?
High school, it was okay. I mean, there was I went through the typical bullying kind of thing. There was a lot of abuse from other people. But, today I can look at, there was a part that I played in that too, with doing that to other people as well. And, I would play the victim role a lot. So, I mean, there were some things like that, my home life was great, and then I would go to school and I wasn't really happy with some of the things that were going on there. Mm-hmm. And, I would come home and kind of be depressed and things like that.
So you say you're a late bloomer. So what's that mean?
So I went through high school, and there wasn't a gigantic amount of peer pressure. I did go to some parties, and people had offered me things, and I wasn't interested. And partly because, like I told you, that people said, you probably should abstain, stay away. And it wasn't until after high school that I didn't really have a lot of direction in my life. I tried a little bit of college. I went away to Rochester to go to school. And
what'd you go to school for?
I went in to study mechanical engineering.
Oh, okay.
And I was too far away from home, and I ended up coming back and reuniting with some of the guys that I went to high school with. Mm-hmm. And they had already had several years of, partying and things like that. And I linked up with them, and it was a short time after that where, it seemed like they were having a good time. And throughout my life, it was very hard for me to feel accepted, and I felt like I was kind of welcomed into that group. So, I started trying out things.
You remember the first time you used anything?
Yeah, the first time was I drank beer. It was at a friend was having a little party, a little outdoor barbecue party type of thing.
And how old were you?
I was 19.
So you didn't even drink until you were 19 years old?
No.
Wow.
No. So I had a few beers, and a short time later, I put gasoline in my mouth and I spit it out in the fire. And then I was running through the fire, and everybody thought it was hilarious. Yeah, so here's
life
me.
of the party sounds familiar.
Right. So I was getting the attention I liked, so
Nothing
I thought it was great.
Acceptance like being the life of a party.
Right.
So you were 19. I'm guessing that was the end of your fire-breathing days, but not necessarily the drinking days.
Right.
So after that party, was there a period of like, whoa, I can't believe I did that? Or was it kind of like, hey, that worked out kind of good?
Yeah, I think it was really more of the environment and the attention that I got more than the substance at that time. Mm-hmm. At that point, I hadn't said, wow, this is really great, but it was a short time after, where drinking beer, liquor, things like that, it kind of felt like, oh, wow, this is great. I should do this more often.
And tell me a little bit about more often. What did more often mean at that point?
Well,
when it's available, once a month, on the weekends.
Yeah, I mean, being under 21, it wasn't readily accessible. There was no alcohol in my house or anything like that, and maybe there was some at friend's house, but the parents kept kept it under lock and key and things like that. So it wasn't really accessible, I guess. So it wasn't really until it was kind of like the weekend warrior thing. You know, if I went to a party and was there, or I went to a friend's house and they had gotten hold of some, you know, I would partake. But it wasn't until I was 21 and I could legally go buy it on my own that I really started experimenting. And I guess it was kind of like, at first it seemed like a hobby, like, oh, there's all these different kinds, you know, I want to try this and I want to try that, and I wonder what this tastes like, and oh, this has a higher alcohol content, I should try this. And it was slow progression in the beginning.
So once you became 21 and of legal drinking age, how did that impact? Did that have a profound effect on your experimental use?
Yeah, I guess also around that time, you know, I was hanging out with a lot of people that were drinking, and they could drink, they could really put it down. And I was kind of the lightweight, so I would have a couple drinks, and you know, I might get sick or something like that, and kind of get made fun of. So
you just switched up the entertainment from breathing fire to the lightweight that pukes.
Right. So everybody would kind of goof on me for being a lightweight. So somewhere in my mind, I thought, well, you know, if I do this a little bit every day, you know, by the time the weekend comes or the next party comes,
somebody else can be the lightweight.
Right. And I can go back to being the life of the party. That was my best thinking at the time.
Yeah. Well, you're 21.
Right.
So how did that kind of play out in regards to any sort of progression beyond alcohol?
Beyond alcohol?
At what age did you try something new?
Well, I mean, during that time, marijuana got introduced, and I really identified with that, the way it made me feel. And, you know, I identified as a pothead, and I thought that was a great thing. The person that had introduced me to pot, you know, one day I went to work, and this guy handed me a little piece of tinfoil and said, "Here, take this is for you." And you know, I had taken it home, and me and my friend tried it, and we thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And the same person also, you know, I had come in a few times into work hungover, and the person said, here, take this, and it'll make you feel better. And that person had a prescription for different things like pain medications and anxiety medications, and you know, so every time I would go to work and see this particular person, you know, they would hand me a few. So I started getting into the prescription pills where I could find them. And you know, I would know a guy who his mom had bottles and bottles of stuff, and she never took it. So, you know, I could clip a few from there, or, you know, maybe a friend that knew somebody who had surgery on their leg and they didn't want them, so maybe I could buy them from them, or they would give them to me. And
how old were you at that point when you started, you know, kind of popping pills, or when they were available?
I would say it was early 20s. You know, I don't know exactly which age. But
so you started drinking when you were 19, experimental use. Turned 21, start drinking more. Then you get introduced to pills almost within the same year, same time period.
Yeah.
So tell me about the progression of, did you stay with the pills, and what that kind of looked like for you? How often? How much?
Well, at first, you know, it was always marijuana on a daily basis, and it was always drinking. I became a daily drinker pretty much not long after I turned 21, because of that great experiment that I told you about. You know, drinking every day. You know, I would wake up in the morning, and I would have to drink, you know, because I would have the shakes. And the pills, sometimes I used them. I would go to work, and I didn't want people to smell alcohol on my breath, so I would use them. And But the progression, so I became a daily drinker, daily pot smoker, and the pills were still kind of like as I could get them. So they weren't really accessible, but every once in a while I would find somebody that would have a script that I could buy, things like that.
At any point did you think, hey, maybe there's a problem here? Between the drinking every day, smoking weed every day, and taking pills when they were available, was there ever a passing thought that, hey, maybe this is a problem? Or did anybody say, hey, Lawrence, what's up with you drinking every day? Or what's up with you being stoned every day?
Well,
because you didn't even start drinking until you were 19, so that's you're a late bloomer, but sounds like a fast progressor.
Oh yeah, definitely. My best friend, there were times where, because when I drank, and I would drink huge quantities, and I would get completely out of control,
Ever a blackout drinker?
Oh yeah.
So drink and then
pretty
the next
regularly.
day have a regular blackout drinker. So drink and the next day have no idea what happened the day before.
Yeah.
Not pass out, blackout.
Yeah, that would be that was a normal thing. Okay. But I didn't know it was an abnormal thing. The next day I would wake up and somebody said, "Oh my God, I can't believe what you did last night to that person, or what you said or what you did." And I would think it was funny. I would be like, "Oh, well, tell me what I did." And they would just look at me like, "You don't remember?"
Yeah.
So I didn't think that was really abnormal. My best friend at the time, so at times he would say, "You're really getting out of control. You need to stop, or you need to slow down, or something." But it's hard to take sound advice from your drinking buddy. That you're getting a little bit out of control.
Oh yeah. We're actively trying to do an intervention on somebody.
Right.
You're getting worse than me.
But nobody else ever said anything because.
What about your mom and dad? Because you were pretty close with your mom and dad, and you had a pretty good upbringing. You were a single child. Did you hide this from mom and dad and other family members?
Yeah, pretty much, because.
How?
Well, my parents had split up right when I graduated high school.
Okay.
So my dad went in one direction, my mom went in another direction, and they both got into relationships. So they were kind of preoccupied. I mean, we touch base here and there.
And you're an adult at this point.
Yeah. So, and I didn't drink at home or anything. There were times where when I didn't stay over at somebody's house, I would come home and it'd be like 3 o'clock in the morning. Everybody'd be sleeping.
Yeah.
Sleep till noontime or whatever, and
still be able to maintain employment.
Right.
What did you do?
I worked as a toll collector for many years.
Okay.
At that particular time, the people that I worked with, they weren't really concerned if I came to work intoxicated, as long as I showed up.
As long as you stay in the booth.
Right. So, nobody ever really, nobody really said anything.
Now, did your use stop at the pills?
No.
Because you're in your early 20s now. You started drinking when you were 19. Short period of time, turned into a daily drinker, daily pot smoker. Now you're popping pills within a 12-month period, 18-month period. What else happens?
Along the way, I started getting in trouble with the law. I got a DWI for alcohol, and that was kind of a slap on the wrist. And so I would try to change to different substances in order to try to maintain some kind of control. Mm-hmm. And then I ended up moving on to harder drugs. I started using cocaine in binging.
How old were you at that point? Still early 20s?
Yeah, maybe 25, 26. Mm-hmm. And, I would blow all my money and, 3 days later have to ask my mom for gas money, or, wouldn't have food to eat and have to eat candy bars and things like that. And you know, a little bit later than that, it was becoming more difficult and too expensive for the pills. You know, I used to do things like OxyContin, and
they aren't cheap once you build up a tolerance.
yeah, I mean they were like they were like $40-50 a piece, and you know, that'd be gone instantly.
So you move on.
So one of my friends had a neighbor, and you know, I was over there one day, and you know, I didn't know what withdrawal from opiates looked like, and
you didn't realize you become physically dependent on it.
Right.
And when you don't have them, now you got a problem.
yeah, one day I was over there, and you know, I'm describing to the guy what's going on, and he
You're
says,
thinking you got the flu.
yeah,
And he's saying, have I got something for you?
he's like, dude, you're dope sick. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you take all these opiate pain pills and everything, and you don't have any, so now you're sick. And he said, of course, like you said, he said, hey, I know where we can score some
Good
dope.
news and bad news. The bad news is you're dope sick. The good news is I can fix it.
Right. And it was super cheap. So
A lot cheaper than the pills.
yeah,
So you start doing heroin.
right.
Socially, I don't even know if that's possible. Okay. So I become a social heroin user. I become an occasional heroin user because the progression from 19, then you turn 21, you become the drinking age, to drinking daily, to smoking weed daily, to popping opiates, to now you're 25, 26, doing dope.
Yeah.
So within 5 years, 6 years, you go from not doing anything to turning the legal drinking age, drinking, smoking weed, popping pills, cocaine, popping pills. Now we're doing heroin.
Right.
Sniffing, shooting.
At first, it started with sniffing. You know, I did that for a while, and there was one day where I was dope sick, and a guy I knew, you know, I knew he had something, so I said, hey, can you hook me up? You know, I'll pay you back. And he said, well, I'll help you out if you let me shoot you up. And at that point, you know, I was so sick, and it was either
do what I got to do.
It was either that or nothing. So I said, sure.
How long did you shoot dope before you realized that you had a problem? And, you know, what was the moment where we hear people, you know, I work in the field of substance abuse, you work in the field of substance abuse, and everybody's heard the terminology of hitting bottom. At what point was your, you know, aha moment of, whoa, I knew I needed help when?
It was less than a year. I mean, it because of my usual progression with things is so quick.
Yeah.
And I was at a good job. I was making great money.
Mm-hmm. Which helped support a heroin habit.
Right. And plus I had accumulated all these things. I started selling all my possessions. And also during the summer, my grandfather had a bunch of life insurance policies, and when my grandmother passed away, he cashed them all in. And he came to me and he said, he knew I had a lot of debt.
Yeah.
Because I was notorious for trying to skate on bills and not pay them off. And he said, how much do you need to pay off all your bills? And I came back to him and I said, well, about $10,000 should do it.
What'd you really need?
Maybe 2, 3 tops.
How did you get help?
Well, at first I had went to a doctor, and I told her that I was hooked on heroin, and I got prescribed methadone, and you know, I started taking them and I started feeling better, but then I came in contact with somebody who wanted to buy them, so I started selling them.
Yeah.
But later on, I got to a point where I was so tired of being sick.
Sick and tired of being sick and tired.
I destroyed my life.
Yeah.
My job was ready to fire me.
How old
the
were you at
girlfriend
this
left.
point?
About 28, 29.
Wow. So we're still looking at the entire course of 10-year period from using nothing to full-blown addiction. Runs the gamut from alcohol to weed to cocaine to pills to heroin. So when did you get sober?
First tried to get sober in 2008, and I had a couple bumps along the road, but I finally stopped in December of 2009.
So we're going on 6 years.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Tell me about how it's been since you got sober, because you're a young person in recovery, and you're very active in the young person movement. So we've got about 3 minutes left, and in that 3 minutes, I want you to talk about some of the stuff that you're involved in, and also include your message to other people. So tell me about some of the things you're involved in. I know you're involved in, there's a media campaign called I Am Not Anonymous. You're very active in the young people in recovery movement. So talk a little bit about that.
Right. I guess coming in, there wasn't a lot of young people, and a few of us had banded together, and we wanted to create something that was fun and that we could continue on in recovery. So we got involved in the young people's movement, traveled the country.
Is there a website that people can get more information about this movement?
YPR.org.
YPR.org.
And I Am Not Anonymous is IANA.org, I believe. So YPR is an advocacy organization. We try to go around and reform the laws and try to help people that are still struggling in addiction.
Give people help, not handcuffs.
Right. And I Am Not Anonymous is a project that was started to try to break the stigma on addiction. So we go out there and we say, hey, I've recovered and you can too.
Got a minute left. Your camera is straight ahead. In that camera, what's your message to somebody that's still sick and suffering, that's still out there?
I guess my message would be that there is help out there. A life in recovery is fun, and it's fruitful. I mean, I have a good life now, and I know my life is worth it today, and yours is too. And it's a lot better on this side than it is on that side. I've been on both, and it's way better on this side.
Lawrence, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Thank you.
Appreciate it.